Hello and welcome once again, everyone. Today I want to talk about storytelling. Now, as a professional speaker, storytelling is a big part of what I do, especially as an extemporaneous speaker. I generally go into even my keynotes with like the general concepts, and maybe I'll have some slides to kind of remind me of where I'm going, but I'm creating the actual talk on the spot. And I'm doing that by connecting with the audience and getting a sense of who's in the room. I even love going to a conference or something early, listen to some of the other workshops or some of the Q&As, get a feel for the vibe of the room, and that's going to so greatly inform the type of keynote and what my energy is going to be when I actually go up on stage. Now, you can take classes in storytelling, we can get into the nuance of all that, but one thing that I really want to kind of connect in this video is that storytelling is as old as human beings are. And there's a reason from, the young ages that we are fascinated by fantasy and all of this. There's a reason why that happens. It's because if you look at our evolution, the way that we read and write and the way we've learned to use symbols is incredible. And it's been around a long time, but not as long as how we've been verbally communicating. Even if we look at like the cradle of civilization, some of the earliest transcribed text from Mesopotamia, these weren't meant to replace the oration, the order. It wasn't meant to replace storytelling. It was meant to just try to preserve stories or the concepts of stories so that we can go back and again retell them and not lose that idea. But primarily, text and handwriting was initially created a lot more for keeping track of stuff, inventory. The agricultural revolution, trying to know how much grain and seed and all this we have, stuff we didn't really want to dedicate too much of our memory to, and it was also important that we got it exactly the same every time. Now, one of the incredible things that we have resource to, especially here in North America and other parts of the world, is that storytelling is still alive all around us. And we often see, especially when you talk about Indigenous education, we often think of it as like our Western way, which is a lot more academic with our texts and essays and APA formatting and all of that, and the Indigenous ways of learning, which includes a lot more storytelling. But I believe that that is just a glimpse into all of our pasts in the way that we shared knowledge. And we have these resources around us where there are expert storytellers who talk about, the way to, again, speak to the audience. And this is there's a differentiation of certain ritualistic stories and chants that need to stay fixed, and they're called fixed stories. And then there's the living stories, which is really what I want to talk about. And living stories, the concept is something that we can take into every aspect of our life, and that is about telling a story with a deep connection to the person that you're telling the story to. So get to know that person. Maybe they're a complete stranger, but get to know them by watching their reactions as you're telling a story. As a professional speaker, you hear all kinds of different things of visualize people in their underwear in the audience and all that. Never do that. I don't know who does that. One thing that I like to do is speak to the head nods in the room. And that's something that has always really helped me, because as a speaker, anyone who's been up on stage, you know how important it is to get something back from the audience. And you're desperately, trying to, did that thing that I just said land? Or even as a comedian, did that joke or that bit land? And if you're speaking in front of an audience, you're never going to have everyone in that room connect with every aspect of your talk. But look for the person or the people that are connecting to what you're saying. You say that impactful thing, and this is when I realized that I had that strength inside me, and you notice where those couple head nods are. And then in that instant, you make connection with them, and you see them head nod, and you said, yeah, that's when I knew that was inside of me. And you make this deep connection with that person. Then when you move on to your next aspect of your story, look for where the next head nod is, and maybe it's over on this side of the room. And that's when I got to the top of the mountain and I did that thing. It's all about connecting with the audience. And I know in the early stages of public speaking, We often stick very rigidly to our scripts and we go word for word for word, but that can feel disconnected. It could feel like you're not actually there for the audience, especially as we're coming into a world with, AI potentially even replacing public speakers. Think about what makes you human. What makes you human is your ability to connect, perhaps unconsciously, with people in the audience, or perhaps very consciously, but connect with them. Get that human-to-human contact happening. Don't just seem robotic up there. Tell a story with whatever, even if it's the most academic paper. Tell a story of your research. Tell a story of your findings. Tell a story of how the research came to life. And you're going to get much more connection from the people and much more buy-in of whatever it is that you're trying to share. Thanks for being part of my audience here. This is also very difficult with a camera, but I can feel you with me on this one. But I hope you got something out of this, and we'll catch you next time.